When my sister left her husband, I never expected it would change my life in such a profound way. She arrived at my doorstep with her 2 young children, seeking refuge after a messy divorce. I was happy to offer a place for them to stay, but what started as a simple act of family support quickly grew complicated. The more time I spent with her children, the closer we became. Her son, a bright, sensitive teenager, and her daughter, a sweet and curious girl, both opened up to me in ways I never imagined. Slowly, I realized that my bond with them had shifted from aunt to something deeper, something that felt like parenthood itself. I found myself emotionally entangled in their lives, caring about their homework and their fears and their dreams with an intensity I'd never experienced. The protective instinct was overwhelming. The love was undeniable. But so was the guilt, because these weren't my children, and my sister was their mother. As I navigated the complexities of these feelings, I had to decide whether acknowledging this parental love would heal or hurt everyone involved. If you want to know how 2 children changed everything I thought I knew about family and love, hit that like button and subscribe now. Comment below about an unexpected relationship that transformed your life. This story will move you deeply. Let's begin. My name is Caroline Bennett, and I need to tell you about how my carefully constructed independent life was completely transformed when my younger sister Maya showed up at my doorstep with 2 suitcases, 2 frightened children, and nowhere else to go. This is a story about unexpected parenthood, about bonds that transcend biology, about discovering capacities for love you never knew existed, and about the complicated reality that sometimes falling in love with children who aren't yours can create as many problems as it solves. I was 38 years old and had built exactly the life I wanted for myself. I worked as a senior architect at a respected firm in Portland, owned a beautiful 3-bedroom craftsman house in a quiet neighborhood, traveled frequently for both work and pleasure, and enjoyed a rich social life with close friends. I had deliberately chosen not to have children of my own, a decision I'd made in my early 30s after careful consideration of my priorities and what I wanted from life. I valued my freedom, my career advancement, my ability to make spontaneous decisions without considering anyone else's needs. My relationship with my younger sister Maya had always been complicated. She was 5 years younger than me, and we'd grown up with very different approaches to life. Where I was cautious and planned everything meticulously, Maya was impulsive and emotional. Where I prioritized education and career, Maya had gotten married young to her high school sweetheart Brad, and immediately started having children. By the time she was 28, she had 2 kids, Ethan, who was 13, and Sophie, who was 8. Maya and I weren't particularly close despite being sisters. We lived in the same city, but saw each other mainly at family gatherings and occasional obligatory lunches. I loved my niece and nephew in the abstract way you love family members you see a few times a year, buying them birthday presents and asking polite questions about school. But I didn't have deep relationships with them. They were Maya's children, part of her life, not really part of mine. Then everything fell apart for Maya. Her marriage to Brad had been deteriorating for years, apparently, though she'd hidden the extent of the problems from family. Brad had developed a serious gambling addiction that had drained their savings and put them into significant debt. He'd become increasingly volatile and unpredictable, and while Maya insisted he'd never been physically abusive, the emotional and financial abuse had been substantial. When Maya finally found the courage to leave, she discovered that Brad had secretly taken out a second mortgage on their house and maxed out credit cards in her name. She was left with destroyed credit, no savings, 2 children to support, and a legal mess that would take months to untangle. Maya called me on a Tuesday evening in late August, her voice shaking with barely controlled panic. "Caroline, I need help. I left Brad. I have the kids and our clothes, and that's it. Can we stay with you for just a few days until I figure something out?" I said yes immediately because what else could I say? She was my sister. Those were my niece and nephew. Of course, they could stay with me temporarily while Maya sorted out her situation. I genuinely thought it would be temporary, maybe a week or 2 at most while she found a rental apartment she could afford, and got the children enrolled in new schools. They arrived that same evening with 2 suitcases of hastily packed belongings, Ethan carrying a backpack and looking shell-shocked, Sophie clutching a stuffed rabbit and trying not to cry. Maya looked exhausted and defeated in ways I'd never seen her. The vibrant younger sister I remembered replaced by someone who looked 10 years older and completely lost. I settled them into my 2 spare bedrooms, giving Maya the larger room, and having Ethan and Sophie share the smaller one with the twin beds I'd bought years ago mainly for guests. I ordered pizza for dinner because none of us had energy for anything more complicated, and we sat around my dining table in awkward silence, the children picking at their food, and Maya staring at nothing with hollow eyes. "It's just temporary," Maya kept saying, almost like a mantra she was using to convince herself. "Just until I can find a place and get the kids enrolled in school and figure out the legal stuff with Brad. Maybe 2 weeks, 3 at most." 2 weeks turned into a month. 1 month turned into 3. Maya was drowning in legal complications, fighting Brad in court over custody and financial issues, working a low-paying retail job because it was all she could find quickly with her limited work history, and barely keeping her head above water emotionally. Finding an apartment she could afford in Portland's expensive rental market while also paying legal fees proved nearly impossible. The temporary arrangement kept extending indefinitely. During those first few months, I maintained careful emotional distance. I was helping my sister and providing housing for my niece and nephew, but I was determinedly not getting too involved in their daily lives. I worked long hours at my firm, came home late, and mostly stayed in my own space when I was home. I was polite and helpful, but boundaried, making it clear through my actions that this was Maya's responsibility, and I was just providing temporary shelter. But proximity has a way of breaking down boundaries you've carefully constructed. I couldn't help but notice things about Ethan and Sophie that worried me. Ethan was struggling badly with the transition, his grades dropping dramatically, his social withdrawal becoming more pronounced. He spent hours alone in his room, and I could hear him sometimes late at night, crying quietly when he thought no one could hear. Sophie was having nightmares several times a week, waking up screaming about monsters that I gradually realized were thinly disguised manifestations of fear about her father and the chaos her life had become. Maya was too overwhelmed with her own crisis to fully attend to what her children were going through. She was physically present, but emotionally absent, going through motions of parenting without really connecting. She'd make dinner mechanically, ask about homework without really listening to answers, and then retreat to her room where I could hear her on the phone with lawyers or crying alone. The children started gravitating toward me instead. It happened gradually, almost imperceptibly at first. Sophie started appearing in my home office doorway in the evenings, asking quiet questions about what I was working on. Ethan began staying in common areas when I was home instead of hiding in his room. They started waiting for me to come home from work, their faces lighting up when I walked through the door in ways that made my chest tighten with unfamiliar emotion. I found myself adjusting my schedule without consciously deciding to. I started coming home earlier, telling myself it was just to check on things, but really because I wanted to see them. I began helping with homework, first just answering occasional questions, then sitting with them through entire assignments. I started cooking real dinners instead of grabbing takeout, discovering that I actually enjoyed preparing meals that Sophie would enthusiastically compliment, and Ethan would quietly eat multiple servings of. The transformation snuck up on me so gradually that I didn't realize how deep I was getting until I was already completely submerged. I started caring intensely about things that had never mattered to me before. Whether Ethan understood his algebra homework became genuinely important. Whether Sophie had friends at her new school kept me awake at night. Their emotional well-being started mattering to me more than my own comfort or convenience. I noticed everything about them with an attention to detail that surprised me. I knew that Ethan was anxious about an upcoming science presentation and needed encouragement. I knew that Sophie was being excluded by a group of girls at school and needed validation that she was wonderful exactly as she was. I knew Ethan's favorite foods and Sophie's bedtime fears, and both of their dreams and worries in ways Maya seemed to have stopped tracking. The protective instinct was overwhelming and unfamiliar. When Ethan came home with a bruise from being shoved by another kid at school, I felt rage so intense it scared me. When Sophie cried about missing her father despite everything, I wanted to simultaneously comfort her and also rage at Brad for creating this situation. I found myself lying awake nights planning how to help them, researching therapists and tutoring programs and activities that might help them heal. 6 months after they'd moved in, I realized with sudden clarity that I had fallen completely and irrevocably in love with these children. Not as an aunt, not as a temporary guardian, but as a parent. The love I felt for Ethan and Sophie was consuming and fierce and unconditional in ways I'd never experienced before. I would have done anything for them, sacrificed anything, moved heaven and earth to protect them and help them thrive. This realization terrified me for several reasons. First, because I'd spent my entire adult life convinced I didn't want to be a parent, and here I was experiencing the most intense parental love imaginable for children who weren't even mine. Second, because these children already had a mother, my sister, who was living in my house and theoretically parenting them even if she was doing it badly in her current state. And third, because I had no legal rights or standing, no claim to these children beyond being their aunt. Yet I loved them as deeply as any biological parent could. I started doing things that crossed clear boundaries into parenting territory. I researched and enrolled Ethan in therapy without asking Maya first, just informed her it was happening. I signed Sophie up for art classes she'd expressed interest in and drove her there weekly. I attended Ethan's parent-teacher conferences when Maya was working. I made doctor's appointments and took them for haircuts and bought them clothes when I noticed they'd outgrown things. Maya noticed, of course. How could she not? But her reaction wasn't what I expected. Instead of being territorial or resentful, she seemed almost relieved. She started explicitly delegating parenting responsibilities to me, asking me to handle things she couldn't manage. Can you help Ethan with his college research? Can you talk to Sophie about her friendship problems? Can you handle the school pickup this week? The children started calling me variations of my name that felt increasingly parental. Sophie started occasionally calling me Mama Caroline when she was tired or upset. Ethan started introducing me as basically my mom to his friends. They came to me first with problems and accomplishments, seeking my approval and comfort and guidance. 1 year after they moved in, Maya and I had the conversation that had been building for months. She came to my home office one evening after the kids were asleep and said quietly, "We need to talk about what's happening here." "Okay," I said, bracing myself for her to tell me I was overstepping, that I needed to back off and remember they were her children. Instead, Maya said, "You're more their parent than I am right now. Maybe more than I've ever been, honestly. You're the one they rely on and trust and come to for everything, and I don't know how to feel about that." "I'm sorry," I started, but she cut me off. "Don't apologize. You've been amazing with them. You've given them stability and attention and love that I haven't been capable of giving. But I need to know what you want here, Caroline. Is this temporary for you? Are you just helping until I get back on my feet? Or is this something else?" I took a deep breath and decided to be completely honest. I love them, Maya. I love Ethan and Sophie like they're my own children. I know they're not. I know they're yours. But the love I feel is parental and consuming, and not something I can just turn off when you eventually move out and take them with you. Maya was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "What if we didn't move out? What if we made this permanent?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, what if we raised them together? You're already doing most of the parenting anyway. What if we made it official, formalized it somehow? You could adopt them or we could set up legal guardianship or something. They could have 2 moms instead of one overwhelmed mess of a mother." The idea was simultaneously everything I wanted and completely terrifying. What about Brad? He'd never agree to that. "Brad is about to lose his parental rights," Maya said. "The court is finally seeing what he is. Between the financial abuse and the instability and the missed visitations, his lawyer is telling him he's likely going to end up with supervised visits at best. We could do this, Caroline, if you want to." I did want to. God, I wanted it so much it physically hurt. But I also needed to be realistic about what it would mean. This would change everything. My career, my freedom, my entire life. I'd be committing to raising 2 children through their teenage years and beyond. That's not temporary. That's permanent. "I know," Maya said, "and I wouldn't blame you if you said no. You didn't sign up for this, but you're already doing it anyway, and you're doing it better than I ever did even before everything fell apart." Over the following weeks, we had multiple serious conversations about what co-parenting would actually look like. We discussed finances and responsibilities and decision-making authority. We talked to a family lawyer about legal options for formalizing my parental role. Most importantly, we talked to Ethan and Sophie about what they wanted. Ethan, at 14, was old enough to have clear opinions. "I want to stay here," he said firmly. "I want you both." Mama Caroline gets me in ways no one else does, and Mom is still my mom. Why can't I have both? Sophie at 9 was simpler and more direct. I love you, Aunt Caroline. You make me feel safe. Please don't make us leave. We made it official 6 months later. Maya and I became legal co-parents through a guardianship arrangement that gave me equal parental rights and responsibilities. We renovated my house to better accommodate all of us long-term, converting the basement into a proper suite for Maya so the kids could each have their own bedroom. We established clear systems for co-parenting, divided responsibilities based on our strengths, and committed to raising these children together. It wasn't always easy. Maya and I had to navigate complicated feelings about our respective roles. She sometimes felt resentful that I was the parent the kids went to first. I sometimes felt frustrated when Maya made decisions I disagreed with. We had to learn to communicate and compromise and put the children's needs ahead of our own egos. But we made it work because the alternative was unthinkable. These children deserved stability and love, and 2 adults who were fully committed to their well-being. They deserved to not have to choose between the mother who gave birth to them and the aunt who had become a second mother through sheer force of love and presence. That was 5 years ago. Ethan is 19 now, in his second year of college, studying engineering and thriving in ways that still make my heart swell with pride. Sophie is 14, artistic and confident, surrounded by good friends and pursuing her passions. They call Maya Mom and me Mama Caroline, and they genuinely seem to understand that they're lucky to have 2 women who love them unconditionally. Maya has rebuilt her life too. She went back to school, got a degree in accounting, and now has a stable career. She's dating someone kind who treats her well. She's become a better parent through having space to heal and through sharing the load with me instead of drowning alone. As for me, I had to completely let go of the life I'd planned and embrace something I'd never expected to want. My career advancement slowed because I couldn't work 80-hour weeks anymore. My travel decreased dramatically because I had children who needed me home. My spontaneous freedom disappeared entirely because every decision now involved considering Ethan and Sophie. And I've never been happier. The love I feel for these children who started as my niece and nephew but became my son and daughter is the most profound experience of my life. Watching them grow and thrive, knowing I played a crucial role in their healing and development, gives me purpose and joy that no professional achievement ever matched. People sometimes ask if I regret not having biological children of my own. The question always strikes me as odd because I do have children of my own. They didn't come from my body, but they're mine in every way that matters. I'm the one who helped with homework and attended school events and stayed up nights worrying about their futures. I'm the one they trust with their fears and dreams and everyday mundane details. Biology is just genetics. Parenthood is showing up every day with love and commitment. The unexpected truth I learned from this experience is that love isn't something you choose or control. You can't decide not to love someone just because it's inconvenient or doesn't fit your life plan. When my sister and her children showed up at my door 5 years ago, I had no intention of becoming a parent. I was going to help temporarily, and then return to my carefully constructed, independent life. Instead, I fell completely in love with 2 children who needed me, and that love transformed everything. It demolished my assumptions about what I wanted from life. It revealed capacities for selflessness and devotion I didn't know I possessed. It taught me that sometimes the most important thing you'll ever do is something you never planned to do at all. Ethan and Sophie didn't just change my life. They gave me a life I didn't know I was missing. They filled spaces I didn't know were empty. They taught me that family isn't just about blood or biology, or even choice sometimes. Sometimes family is about showing up when someone needs you, and discovering that in helping them, you've actually saved yourself. That's what happened when my sister left her husband and came to live with me with her 2 children. I thought I was offering temporary shelter. Instead, I ended up falling in love with her kids in the most profound, parental, transformative way possible. And that unexpected love became the foundation of the most meaningful chapter of my entire life. If this story moved you, if you've ever experienced unexpected love that changed everything, smash that like button and subscribe. Share with someone who needs to know that family takes many forms. Comment about a relationship that transformed your life. Remember that love doesn't always arrive how we expect it, that parenthood is about presence, not biology, and that sometimes the most important yes you'll ever say is to something you never planned to want.